We interrupt this fake news podcast for an important announcement from the President of the United States.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I know you're all wondering why we're here today. I have some big, huge announcements. First up, I nominate Alex Acosta for Secretary of Labor. Great news, great news. He's a hell of a human being. I've known him for a long time. Known him for a long time. Love him. Amazing. Moving on, as you know, my election was the greatest election since Reagan. Possibly the greatest election ever. I mean, come on. You can't argue with the numbers. Massive electoral college victory. Massive. Who knows? Nobody knows, but I know. The greatest election since Reagan. We can all agree on that, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can all agree on that, right? And you people have been some of the most dishonest people this earth has ever known. I mean, come on. I mean, I had this great election. You're not covering it. You're putting fake news out. What's wrong with you? Failing New York Times. I mean, what is wrong with you? Instead, you're talking about Russia. I don't understand. Very dishonest, ridiculous, un-American, quite frankly. I'm a great person. Everybody that works for me is a great person. I only hire great people. Let's take some questions.
Mr. President, you said the greatest election since Reagan, but Barack Obama had a larger margin in...
No. I was only talking about Republicans, okay? Get your facts straight. This is more fake news. Get your facts straight, okay? Nobody else counts.
But President Bush...
No. This information I was given. I was on the toilet right before I came out here. I saw it scrawled on the bathroom stall. It said, best president ever. I thought to myself, what about Reagan? But who am I to question the information I was given? What do you want from me?
I guess my question is, while you're going around calling everything that you don't like fake news, why should the American people trust you when you're citing false information?
No, it is not false. I told you where I've got it. I've seen it around. Next question.
Mr. President, doesn't Michael Flynn's resignation at least confirm some of the leaks about your administration in contact with Russian officials?
No. Russia is fake news. The leaks are real, but the news is fake, okay? The leaks are real, and they are criminal. It's Obama and Hillary. I inherited this mess with record job growth and stock numbers. It was a mess, and the leaks are absolutely real. Just thank God the information that the real leaks were sharing was totally fake. And Flynn had nothing to do with it. It just happened to see him in the hall. I said, hey, Michael, you're fired. It was absolutely nothing to do with the totally fake news about Russia. That was leaked, but by absolutely credible sources an hour ago. It has nothing to do with making you a scapegoat for my administration. I just don't like you. Get out of my office. You're fired. Russia is fake news. Next question.
Mr. President, what will be your response to the recent acts of aggression by Russia?
Nothing. Russia is fake news. I want to be friends with Russia. I should probably shoot that boat 30 miles off the coast because I'm tired of that son of a bitch. Everybody would cheer. They have nuclear weapons. We have nuclear weapons. I sink their ship. They shoot down our planes. We launch our nukes. They launch their nukes. Millions of people die. Godzilla would rise from the ocean. Mecha would descend from the sky. It would be a battle the world has never seen. Millions or more would die. Everyone would cheer. I've seen the briefing, but I said, no, Bannon, I don't want to do that. I don't care if that's what everybody wants. I want to be friends. Russia is fake news. Look, the point is, I'm having fun, and you people are fake news. You are the lowest, most dishonest, disgusting scum of the earth, except maybe Fox and Friends, but you people make me sick. Your children make me sick. I want to round all of you up and have you shot. And tomorrow, you're going to print about how Trump is ranting and raving. I'm not ranting and raving. I'm going to hate you all. Russia is fake news. Next question. Yes, you, the Jewy guy from the front row.
Mr. President, no one is saying that you are anti-Semitic or that you have anything to do with this, but what are you going to do about these recent attacks that have been going on around the country?
No, you're fake news. Russia is fake news. I am the least anti-Semitic person in the world. I had the greatest election ever. Hillary couldn't beat me. Obama couldn't beat me. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. Reagan couldn't even have beat me. Everybody knows it. Everybody is thinking it. Everybody's talking about it. I might as well go ahead and say it. That's your story. I won the election. Russia is fake news. Next question.
Are you going to include the Congressional Black Caucus in discussions about how you plan to address urban and inner city policies?
Are they friends of yours? Set up a meeting. I would love to meet with them. Get on your people's hotline. Get the Black Caucus, Frederick Douglass, and Shaft in a meeting. I walk in. The blacks all love me. The blacks have always loved me. You know, my low-income housing initiative in Manhattan that, you know, expelled them from their homes. That was a great thing. I had the greatest election ever. That's your story. No more question. Russia is fake news.
From the Truth and Beauty Laboratory in Carrollton, Georgia, welcome to episode 5 of Fake News Podcast, where the leaks are real, but the news is always fake. I'm your host, Sean Jepson, alongside Sean Caffrey, and joining us on Skype from Farmington, New Mexico, Jason Rains. This week, the president holds a press conference, Russia continues to be fake news, and Erick Dunlap joins us from Athens to discuss local craft beers from Georgia. Let's get to it.
No, that press conference was the most incoherent. I mean, you really kind of have to go back to Nixon to get an idea of how incoherent that conversation with the press was. And what's so ridiculous is that his internal staff members, Steve Miller, Steve O'Bannon, his daughter, are all telling him how great he was after that press conference, and he believes that. He is so isolated from the common man that he believes those internal advisors that are telling him he did a great job. And that was the most atrocious press conference I've ever seen a president give in my lifetime.
Here's another thing I want to add to it. Like, years ago when Hurricane Katrina hit and the FEMA's response was very slow, a lot of people suggested that the reason why is because George W. Bush had surrounded himself with sycophants who were afraid to tell him what was really going on. And by the time when Bush finally first realized what was going on in New Orleans, and it was on the news along with everyone else, and he was a bit upset about that. And a lot of people question, are you surrounding yourself with the right advisors who are going to tell you what you need to hear, even if you don't want to hear it? That was, to me, that was news back then, but to me, seems like Trump has amplified that issue. He only seems to surround himself by family and yes men, absolute sycophants, who are only going to he only wants to hear people tell him how great he is. And that's a problem. When we actually face a crisis which every president does, what is Trump's response going to be to that crisis?
And when we're facing one right now, quite frankly, Jason, let me just talk for a second here. We are facing a crisis. China announced today that they are ending the coal exports to North Korea in retaliation for their ballistic missile launch. What sparked World War II? What made Japan attack Pearl Harbor? The fact that Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, look, because of your incursions into China, your incursions into Southeast Asia, we are no longer going to export oil to you. And Japan was kind of faced with like, well, we either fight you for your resources or we slowly strangle and die. So I guess we're going to initiate World War II with the United States. And that's kind of the same deal that North Korea has been given by China, their greatest benefactor. The only person that sends them, high-end economical goods is basically saying, we're done with you. If you're launching ballistic missiles, then we're out. So what kind of corner has that backed us into, and how is the Trump administration going to respond to that? It's unknown. We don't know. We don't even have a national security advisor because your first choice got fired for lying to the vice president, and your second choice after your press conference said, I want no part of that shit show. And so who is guiding you? Steve O'Bannon? A white nationalist Nazi? Is that who's guiding you?
That's who is guiding him, yes.
And that is incredibly disturbing. We're at a point where you have backed an insane regime into a corner. And what typically happens historically when you back an insane regime into a corner? A lot of bullshit is usually what happens. And we're here. We're there. And we've got Japan screaming for a missile defense and more troops to be put into Okinawa. We're screaming for that. This is a flashpoint. And it has been completely non-discussed. This has not been a part of the diatribe that has been coming out of the Donald Trump administration. And we're at a flashpoint right now. We're at a supreme flashpoint. And there's been no discussion about it. And that concerns me.
I agree. Trump needs to gather up all of his advisors and head down to the Mar-a-Lago restaurant and have a tough strategic talk
where
about
everybody can hear what you're talking about. That's cool. There's no Chinese agents in that room, not at all. There's no Russian intelligence agents in that room. Fine, let's just talk about it like we're in the Situation Room. No problem. This is totally a secured location with no external microphones that are recording our conversations. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
His aides were, because it's poorly lit in there, they were lighting the classified documents with their phones.
Yeah, sure.
Like holding their cell phone camera up to like national secrets.
Here's the it's another polarized conversation. In the campaign, the left was talking about all right, so in the campaign, the Republicans were talking about how awful Hillary was for having a private email server, that she was passing secret information along, that this was a breach of trust, let's lock her up, let's throw her in prison, she's the most dangerous, worst president ever. The Democrats are kind of like, hey, FBI hasn't found anything, let it go. Now the tables have turned, and we're seeing the Trump administration even more careless. There's reports coming out about how they're more careless. They're using unsecured phones. They're talking about national secrets in an open public. They're even being more careless with security. The left is bringing this up huge, like this is a disaster, this is a disgrace, and the right's just like, well, what about Hillary? That seems to always be that fallacy that you bring up. Well, what about what Hillary did? So it's always this back and forth game. We're not going to actually address the issue. Hillary was wrong for having her private email server. Trump is probably doing even worse by talking about national secrets in open public, by using their cell phones to light unsecured cell phones to light up documents that they can read. When do you finally start casting blame on somebody for this?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think you could impeach Trump for lighting classified documents with unsecured cell phones. I think that in and of itself is not enough.
Well, but thousands of people around the country last year were cheering lock her up for that.
I know. I think that they were wrong to cheer for that. But here's the thing. If it was just that, I would say, okay, big mistake. You're not really on the ball here. You're asleep at the wheel. But you don't need to go to jail over that. You don't need to lose your position over that. But it's one thing after another. It's so many small things that by themselves wouldn't be,
if
this was the only thing that Trump administration had done this week, it'd be nothing but nonstop news all week. The problem is that we have a new headline that seems equally as devastating and as bad every day. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to prioritize. It's hard to triage.
To cite another example,
and I think that's an overarching strategy. I think that's the work of Steve Bannon. We have seen more actions taken in the first 100 days than we have in the last 5 presidencies combined. And I don't think that is an emblem of chaos. I don't think that's an example of chaos. I think that's an example of a concerted strategy that we're going to dump so much on you that the things that we don't care about is what you're going to get wrapped up in, and the things we really do care about, like the dismantling of Dodd-Frank, the dismantling of regulations on Wall Street, which, really matter. I mean, that's how we created a bubble. That's how we created the Great Recession. And Dodd-Frank was meant to be a stopgap to make sure we never get to there again. And somehow we are there again. Donald Trump is taking credit for the fact that the stock market is at an all-time high. Well, yeah, that's true. That's true for now. And we have created a massive bubble, and we have set ourselves up. And quite frankly, Donald Trump has created a bubble that has to burst. And when it does, where are the 401ks? Where are those people when the bubble bursts and the bottom falls out? And here we are. This is not as much chaos. This is not much chaos as we interpret it on face value. I think there is forethought behind this. Because if we can create enough controversy to where you take up every hour of the 24-hour news cycle with things that are ineffectual, not really that important, they're kind of ridiculous, but they're not really that important, then we get to sneak in all of these things that really do matter. And that's what they're doing.
You got a point. Like we've been talking about the press conference and Michael Flynn's resignation, but the day after the press conference, Trump signs an order to repeal, to allow coal companies to dump in streams.
I mean, my God.
And we're not even talking about, we haven't even gotten to that yet.
Who does that help? Who does that help? Does that help the West Virginia coal miner that is dependent on their company for their job, and they'll defend it to the death? Does that help them? Does that help them? The fact that you can poison the drinking water that my own employee that's digging my coal drinks every night when he goes home? Who does that help? Like, what is the point in that? What is the point in that? I don't get it. I don't get it. If you're about adding jobs and you're about bringing back the economy of the 1950s, which is a completely separate discussion about whether that's valid or not, but if that's what you want to do, how does poisoning the drinking water of your own workers benefit you, Big Coal? Like, come on. The fact that Scott Pruitt, excuse me, just 1 second, Jason, you got it. Just let me get this point out there. Scott Pruitt has already announced, as the potential head of the EPA, that in his opinion, the entire agency should cease to exist by 2018. That is his goal, as the EPA minister, is to get the EPA out of the federal government in 1 year. Who does that help? Who does that help? I mean,
if you own a coal plant and you find it financially inconvenient to dispose of your waste properly, I think it helps you a good bit.
Sure. Well,
I don't think it helps anyone else.
Well, and how does that help the West Virginia coal miner that's working for $10 an hour down in a deep, dark hole? How does that help him? Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm going to dig your coal, and I'm going to go home and drink your contaminated water, and I'm going to die at a very early age.
You could say it's saving some jobs. You could say it's saving some jobs, but you can't get poisoned. Like, your job's worthless if your water is not drinkable.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and poison our own workforce. The only body of people that are loyal to my business, because that's the only business that they have access to make a living. Let's go ahead and poison them.
I, for one, say if it's okay for Flint, Michigan not to have any clean drinking water, it's okay for the rest of the country.
Sure.
Why does Flint, Michigan get to be the only country without
brown,
clean drinking water?
Drink it down. If it's black, send it back.
There you go.
I grew up in Carroll County. That's our mantra. That's our mantra. If it's brown, drink it down. If it's black, send it back, man. Yeah.
That is going to be put on the dollar bill soon. That's going to replace that. That's going to replace E pluribus unum. That's as our new national motto. If it's brown, drink it down.
We know that you're probably wondering how to survive the Trump apocalypse, and with us now we have special guest, beer connoisseur, and man about town from Athens, Georgia, Erick Dunlap. Erick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So, Erick, you saw the train wreck of a press conference from the president this week. So what would you recommend as a refreshing beverage to wash down the shit sandwich we watched?
Well, last week, Preacher Conference released again their Athena Paradiso. It's a Berliner Weiss beer brewed with cranberry, raspberry, and tart cherry. It's great. It pours almost a shockingly pink, nice white lace, medium carbonation in the mouthfeel. Really nice version of their year-round Athena Berliner Weiss. It's great. It's a great beer.
That does sound good. That sounds like a beer I'd like to wash down the peanuts of Trump's turds with. So there's been all this talk about Russia going on. What kind of beer would you recommend to our Russian comrades?
Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout by North Coast Brewing. That's the first thing that pops in my head.
Right on. And how would you describe the flavor and the buzz I might expect to catch from drinking such a beer?
It's heavy, kind of dry, more like an Irish style stout. Not so sweet like our American stouts are, but it definitely can pack a punch. I think it's probably around 10% alcohol.
Right on. Well, I think I can speak for all of us. That ABV percentage is what we're all looking for. Less is more, quality over quantity. So, I mean, this is a pretty thick, dark stout here. I mean, this is something not for the faint-hearted. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, go for it. It's also something just great to drink.
It sounds like
for years.
It sounds like about 3 or 4 of those, and I'd be ready to resign in disgrace too.
Yeah, gladly. Like, I'm out. I'm drunk. I'm done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, they only sell it in 4-packs, so.
Well, that says a lot. I mean, I could sell it as a 6, but I don't trust you not to kill each other, so I'm going to give it to you in a 4-pack. So yeah. Well, that says a lot. I mean. Well, I mean, what are your thoughts on the emergence of the Georgia craft beer market? I mean, are we really on the map the way we think we are, or are we just kind of looking at it through a Georgia lens and trying to hoot and holler for the beer from our state? Is it really that good, or have we really made a mark on the map?
As what I'm looking, I'm in a beer trading, beer connoisseur group on Facebook, and everybody's going ape shit about Georgia beer. Unfortunately, though, the only 2 beers people can pretty much get outside of Georgia that are brewed in Georgia are Terrapin and Sweetwater, which are good beers, but they just aren't the exact what I would like to see exported out. Most of our breweries are still small scale, which is cool. I like that. Unfortunately, just waiting on hearing if the House is gonna pass the bill, we'll be able to go to the store and buy instead of going to the store, we could go to the brewery and buy even fresher beer from them. Make it a little easier to possibly trade and ship around the country.
I mean, do you see the passage of that bill as a big thing as far as what breweries can produce and the amount that.
It's hurting the Georgia economy, in my opinion. There's tons of breweries that have decided not to open up here, and they go out of state just because they can't settle the public. They have to go to this 3-tier system, having to sell through a distributor, which hurts them.
So the demand is definitely there for Georgia craft beer. It's that the regulations are inhibiting us. Is that correct?
Yes, that is very true, in my opinion.
So if you think they pass the bill, you're going to start seeing an explosion in more craft beer made in Georgia and being sold around the country?
I think so. I would actually, if not more sold around the country, I would see more people coming to Georgia just for the beer.
And that leads to all kinds of economic benefits that we can't even really expound on. But, if you've got a populace that is ready to move to a state purely because they produce the best craft beer in the region, then what kind of jobs are those bringing to the state? I mean, that's not just alcohol-related jobs. I mean, this is your high-end IT guys. These are your high-end college-educated people. And I can definitely attest to that. I mean, Colorado has always been attractive to me because of their attitude on craft brewing and the fact that I can get some of the best hometown brew in the country, and, in addition to having a high-paid job. And why would I not go there? So, I mean, basically what I'm hearing is that, Georgia is kind of cutting themselves off to a lot of imported talent because of their archaic rules on how you can disseminate alcohol. Would you agree with that?
Very true.
I agree. And, we're already Hollywood East. I mean, we're already Hollywood East. We've got the Grateful Dead going on. We've got movies being made left and right. And typically these are Western-oriented people, like they're from the western part of the United States, where craft brewing laws do not exist to inhibit the sales of their product. And they're moving into a place where the product exists, but the dissemination of that product is regulated based on a very old point of view. And, so what I'm hearing from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is, if we relaxed ourselves on how we could sell and market a Georgia product that is a good product that, can maintain its own with anybody else from anywhere else in the country, and it can put itself right up there with the best beer in the world. Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we do that?
We already are up there with the best beer in the world. Just not very many people have found that out yet.
Exactly. And
when they're in town on a layover, they can't go to a brewery in Atlanta and pick up a 4-pack or a 6-pack to take with them, back to their hotel room, or put it in a suitcase. They have to go to a bar, and which is typically the bars that sell these great beers are further away from the airport or maybe their hotel, and they can't really get the amazing qualities that they can without like searching out like a bar that might sell like what Georgia has to offer. The wide variety of what Georgia has to offer.
And what do we need? What do we need to do, in your opinion, as far as deregulating the market? I mean, do we need to rescind the old blue laws that we've got on books? Do we need to have a uniform alcohol policy for every county? Meaning, it's not up to you, Carrollton, to tell me I can't buy before 12. No, this is a state law, meaning it is the law of the land of the state of Georgia that I can buy alcohol 7 days a week from whatever purveyor that might have it available, and then I should be able to take as much as I want where I want. I mean, is that where we're looking? Is that what we need to do?
Possibly. I would like to see what some counties may have a better law than, say, Carroll County does. I'm not really sure. I'd have to actually look into that a little bit more. So I don't know about a total statewide law in effect, but I think the main one that we should all focus on right now is just trying to get us able to buy from the breweries and help them out. They're a major part of our local economy. The more money that they make, the more jobs they have to fill.
As far as you know, how many local breweries are operating in the state of Georgia? I don't expect you to give an exact answer because we don't know. But as far as you're aware, how many are operating right now?
Breweries and microbrews, between 30 and 50. That I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's ridiculous. I mean, that's a lot.
We have 3 out here in Athens. In Little Clark County, we have 3 breweries, so.
I mean, honest to God, we've got one in Carrollton now. It's called Printer's Ale. And you need to pay me for saying this, by the way, Printer's Ale, just to put that out there for you. But, I mean, even in Carroll County, we've got one. I mean, I think the same kind of deregulation we're seeing for the film industry in Georgia, which has led to us being labeled as Hollywood East, should equally apply to the brewing market. I don't think that the state should be stifling or strangling this kind of free market economy that we've got going in beer. I think it's beautiful. I think we've got a quality product, and I think it needs to be marketed to the entire country, and regulations should be removed. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap up this segment here, Eric, but I just want to leave one last question for you to answer. What are you drinking right now?
Oh, I'm drinking the Athena Paradiso.
Athena Paradiso. It's a fantastic beer. I can attest to that personally. Yeah.
Erick Dunlap.
On Eric's recommendation. Yeah.
Erick Dunlap, special guest, beer connoisseur, and man about town from Athens, Georgia. Erick Dunlap, thank you for joining us on Fake News Podcast.
Thanks for having me on again.
The largest threat to our democracy is not Donald Trump. He'll be gone in a distant memory before you even realize it. The bigger issue is that friends and neighbors are being divided along partisan lines with no middle ground. There's got to be a way back.
I feel like Trump is exploiting that.
Absolutely,
he exploited that during his campaign. He banked on just the taut hatred of Hillary Clinton to get himself elected, and when he gets backed into a corner like we saw at the press conference, he'll conjure up Hillary and Obama again. As I inherited a mess. You mean you inherited a mess in terms of record job growth and the highest stock market ever? Is that the mess you inherited? Let's see what Obama inherited. So there's a lot of I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I think because we're divided and because of this, the statements that you're putting in there, it allows politicians to manipulate us that much easier.
Absolutely, and that's what they prey on. That they guys like Donald Trump, insurgent candidates. I mean, look at Jimmy Carter. Let's just put a liberal example out there as in the interest of being fair and accurate as to other insurgent candidates that have become president. I mean, Jimmy Carter produced buttons that said Jimmy who? They had no idea who this peanut farmer from Georgia was. He was very much an insurgent candidate that played off the chaos of the 1970s and the fallout from Watergate, and he rode that into the White House. And much like Donald Trump, and believe me, I love Jimmy Carter. I think he's a great man. If he was a Catholic, we would make him a saint, but he's a Southern Baptist, so we can't. So a beautiful man who had beautiful ideas, but was grossly underqualified to be president of the United States. And that's why he was a one-term president, because he had no idea what the hell he was doing. He was an insurgent candidate that he was elected based on a reaction to the decade that had preceded his ascendancy. And once he got there, he realized, oh shit, I actually have to govern now, and I have no idea how to. And I think there's a lot of parallels to be drawn. Now,
didn't Ted Kennedy even run against him?
Absolutely, and he almost beat him. He almost beat him.
Yes. So the Democrats even undermined their own legitimacy.
Absolutely.
The White House by Ted Kennedy running against him. And then that, between that and the hostages in Iran, the gas wars, the stagflation that was going on, that really was inherited by the Nixon and Ford administration. That allowed somebody like Ronald Reagan to come in. It also galvanized the moral majority after Roe v. Wade had gathered around him to allow Reagan to come in and exploit that.
And that's a very astute comment. Thank you very much for putting your finger on it. I think Roe v. Wade, more than anything else, did galvanize the moral majority, which was a term that Lee Atwater and the Reagan Express coined, and it has been kind of the bedrock of modern Republican principles ever since. So, this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the first time that America has encountered an insurgent populist candidate that only got elected because they were a reaction to the times the country had just gone through. And,
that brings up.
Go ahead.
Well, I said that brings up an interesting point. After Carter, you got 8 years of Reagan. Are we going to see a parallel to that, where Trump is followed up by a hard swing to the left for a long time?
I hope not. Quite frankly, I hope not. I mean, because this is where I come down, man. This is where I come down. If Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan could reach common ground to do the business of the country in the best interest of the country, then anybody can. Tip O'Neill was a hard-drinking Irishman from Boston. Love that son of a bitch. I wish we could have him back right now. And somehow he reached a level of accommodation with a sagebrush Republican from California who made his bones as an actor. And somehow these two guys got together and did the work of the country.
And here's another thing, is that Trump right now, he has... even things that, say, Reagan didn't necessarily have. Right now, he has the majority in Congress, both houses in Congress, and he's going to have the majority on the Supreme Court, and yet he is still one of the most contentious administrations in recent history. He's fighting the media, and he's fighting, the specter of Hillary Clinton for some reason, continuing to bring that up. What happens when he does have to have a Congress that is not a Republican majority who will actually fight him on certain policies? He's barely making ends meet with a friendly Congress? What happens when he doesn't have that?
Oh, well, you're going to see a level of contentiousness and combativeness that has gone before pale in comparison, and that's what troubles me. What troubles me is that we have created a political landscape where we're rooting for our home team, and if our home team doesn't win, then we want blood from the team that did win. And to me, that is a bigger problem than just Donald Trump. I mean, screw Donald Trump. This guy's out of here. He's going to hang himself. Give him enough rope. He's going to hang himself. He's already made a very good start at that in the first 28 days of his presidency. I'm not worried about Donald Trump. This country is smarter, wiser, and better than he is. And we will show that. We will live that. We will personify that. I'm not worried about Donald Trump. What I'm worried about is a dichotomy where it's us versus you. And you got to remember, we're all on the same team. We all live in this country. We all want what is best for this country. We might argue about what is best, what that is. We might argue about that, and that's fine. That's an argument a democracy needs to have. But it needs to be brought together from a viewpoint that your views are valid, my views are valid. Let's both compromise and meet in the middle. And right now, we don't have that. That's not possible right now.
One of the things, before you can have that, though, you have to at least acknowledge that we live in the same reality. And that's not even happening right now.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Jason, speak to that. I mean, where do you see us as... Are we even capable of uniting for the greater good of America and compromising our ideals, in favor of someone else's? Is that even possible anymore, or are we already beyond that point?
Well, it's pretty tough, man, because we have reached this point where, like Sean was saying, you got people just taking completely different sets of facts about the world. It's not even like we disagree about how to interpret those facts or like what the best response to them is. We disagree just about what is true in the world. And that is one way that Donald Trump, that project of unification that I agree we need really badly, when he's going out there and undermining confidence in the press, tearing down the media, tearing down journalists, telling everybody that anything bad you read about me is not true. It's all made up. Reality has no center. It is really hard to come together around that when you can't just get people to agree on what is really real.
Yeah, and that is a problem. And it has been a systematic undermining of the Fourth Estate. If you cannot trust the media, who can you trust? And I believe this is the fallout of a systematic campaign, largely based on the right, but lightly based on the left, because there are leftist journalists that are guilty of the same, stigma. That, are you reporting the facts, or are you reporting your point of view? And when I turn on the news, I trust you to tell me what the news of the day is, and then you leave it up to me to determine how I feel about that. You don't put an editorial bent on your commentary. And I do think there is a media problem. I don't think Donald Trump is completely off base on this. I do think there is a media problem in this country. I feel like that media has become a for-profit business. Of course it is. It always has been. And we're more interested in generating ratings and advertising revenues than we are in reporting the truth. And I think the left and the right are equally guilty of that. And I think that is a huge problem. I think that's a huge problem. In the old days when it was Peter Jennings for 1 hour at 7 o'clock, we got a 60-minute program where we heard the headlines that were vitally important to our country, and that's all we heard. Well, now we've got 24 hours a day to fill up with content. And that means that things that are not important, that are overblown, that are kind of a figment of the media's imagination, become the focal point of our politics. And I think that's what has generated this us versus them mentality that we are obviously totally in the sway of.
Relax your mind, relax your mind. Makes you live a great long time.
I just want to take just a minute to address something that has been very heavy on my mind the last several weeks as we've all watched the Trump administration unfold. Since the new president has taken office, I have seen and felt and heard a level of hateful confrontation and an us versus them mentality that I've only ever really read about in history books. It has even transcended what we all watched throughout the last campaign. The systematic degradation of our political system and our collective attitude towards this system are at a point now that I almost feel like the violent confrontation is a foregone conclusion. This troubles me to no end. Extremists on the left worry, rightly or wrongly, that President Trump is leading this country into disintegration. Right-wing extremists believe we're already there. There is not even a hint of middle ground between these two groups. The only thing that can destroy this country is the American people. Donald Trump is not powerful enough, smart enough, or personally engaged enough to create a scenario that threatens the survival of our republic. He can only accomplish what we allow him to accomplish. Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis didn't start the Civil War. We as a people did. George Wallace and Malcolm X did not create the violence and the chaos of the 1960s and 70s. We did. When we allow ourselves to be divided by petty politicians who only seek their own aggrandizement, we have failed. When as a people, we give into and are led by the darker angels of our nature, we have failed. When we no longer see our friends and neighbors as legitimate human beings because of how they cast their vote, we have failed. Is Donald Trump responsible for any of this? No. We are. The nation has a decision to make. Moments like these represent how we will be judged as a people and as a society. Are we united, indivisible, unassailable in our love for a country that judges only the content of character? Or is this where it all ends? This language might sound a little extreme, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope I'm wrong, but there is now a preponderance of evidence, in my opinion, that we are rapidly approaching a point of no return. This week alone, I personally have been verbally attacked by very old and dear friends that identify with the left or the right. From the left, I hear my views aren't extreme enough, that I'm too white, or I'm too male, or I'm too entitled to be useful to them. From the right, I'm labeled as a subversive, idiotic, stupid, uninformed, the root of what they see as the problem in America today. I reject all of these labels, and I reject the system that has created them. We have got to find our way back, if it's even possible, to the belief that united we stand, or divided we fall, or as a country, we will all die by suicide. I know this was pretty heavy, not a lot of humor here this morning, but I'm convinced that out of all the issues discussed here on this broadcast, this is the most important one. In my opinion, it is the only issue that can create the chaos and confusion that is confounding our democracy today.
That wraps up another episode of Fake News Podcast. I'm Sean Jepson with Sean Caffrey and Jason Rains. Thank you to our special guest, Erick Dunlap. And thank you for listening. You have been listening to Fake News Podcast. Tune in next Sunday night as we recap the ridiculousness of the week.